For the first time in Asia, connect your land phone and smartphone through SLT Wi-Fi with the SLT Voice app.
Tonight, deep roots. It takes 2 years to kill the ISIS ideology in Sri Lanka.
Army alone cannot launch the long-term plan. Nations should lead that.
Another in cuffs. Zahran Hashim's would-be successor arrested in Saudi Arabia. Statement on roots. Former Maldivian President Mohamed Nasheed touches on true Sri Lankan Muslim identity.
We are the Sinhala Muslims and we want to stand with the people of Sri Lanka.
What are the motives? The US has one eye on Sri Lanka as it seeks $30 million for military financing for the region. All these stories and much more coming up on First at 9 this Friday, the 14th of June 2019.
මුහුණ සති කීපයකට කලින් Fair and Lovely men ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා fairness වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ fairness standard එක වැඩි කරගන්න. Fair and Lovely men anti marks cream.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Well, a very good evening and welcome to First at 9 on AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. I want your top story tonight. Another prominent figure of the terror group National Tawhid Jamaat was arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department in Jeddah of Saudi Arabia today. Now, 4 more suspects were arrested with Mohamed Milhan pertaining to the country's Easter Sunday spate of terror. Milhan is identified as the possible successor to Zahran Hashim, the late leader of National Tawhid Jamaat. 5 suspects were arrested by officials of the Criminal Investigation Department in Jeddah pertaining to the Easter Sunday bombings. They were arrested while hiding in a resort near the Jeddah airport in Saudi Arabia. Mohamed Milhan, who is among the arrested, was next in line to become the successor of Zahran Hashim, the late leader of National Tawhid Jamaat. According to police, the rest of the arrestees, namely M.A. Mohamed Millah, A. Abu Sali and M.I.M. Ismail, as well as M.M.M. Shanawaz Shavri, are also identified as prominent figures of the NTJ. The arrested group was brought to the Katunayaka International Airport at around 4 this morning. Interrogations revealed that the group had been on a pilgrimage to Mecca during Hajj. It also revealed that they have been hiding in Saudi Arabia upon getting to know that they've been hunted by the security forces. It is also reported that Mohamed Milhan, who heads this particular group, was preparing to launch a suicide attack in Sri Lanka. Police have also identified similarities between data found in the computers of Mohamed Milhan and Zahran Hashim. Further investigations revealed that Milhan was the main suspect of the murder of 2 policemen last year who were on duty at Vaunathiu. This adds to the list of overseas arrests made pertaining to suspected links to the Easter bombings, as India too made few arrests recently, detaining a Facebook friend of Zahran Hashim along with 5 others in Coimbatore. Meanwhile, an operation launched by the TID along with the army today led to the arrest of 2 people in the area of Hingula. The duo, identified as Mohamed Rafiq and Mohamed Mustafa, had maintained close affiliations with Zahran Hashim and have also received weapons training. Both had taken a pledge as suicide bombers. Now, yesterday's Parliamentary Select Committee proceedings with ex-governor of the Eastern Province MLA M. Hizbullah on the spot was not limited to arbitration of Kathankudi. He was also grilled on how the controversial Batticaloa campus was funded. In his testimony, it was revealed that Sri Lanka's foreign exchange laws were violated when obtaining funds for the campus.
University College එකට පාඨමාලා දෙකකට නොමිලේ ඉගෙනීම් කරන්න මහවිද්‍යාල අධිකාරියෙන් ඉඩම බදු ගන්නකොට එතන සඳහන් කරනවා ඇමතිවරයාම නෝට් එකක් දානවා මේක පොදු කටයුත්තක් නිසා තමයි අනුමත කරන්න කියලා. නැත්නම් ඉඩම ගන්න බෑ. ඒතර නොමිලේ කරන් පාඨමාලා කරන යුනිවර්සිටි කොලෙජ් එකකයි මුදල් අය කරලා උපාධි ලබා දෙන ආයතනයකටයි ගත්තට පස්සේ මූලික අභිප්‍රාය වෙනස් වෙනවානේ.
අපි මහාවලියකට ඉඩම දෙන්න කියලා ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් දීලා තියෙන්නේ ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් වාර්තා ඔක්කොම අපේ මේකට කිසිම free of charge කියලා මුකුත් නැහැ. nothing to do with it. ඒගොල්ලන් public purpose ට allocate කරාද කියලා අපිට දන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මහාවලිය අපිට දුන්නා. ඒක ඉතින් අපිට දන්නේ නැහැ. I made the request.
Your initial investment was asked by BOI was for 4.75 million. Without being increased, you have got 24 billion coming as an investment. From where did that come, Honorable?
Sheikh Ali Abdullah Al Jufali charity from Saudi Arabia. This is the soft loan, no interest. After 5 years only we have to pay.
If it is a non-profit making organization, how do you intend paying?
We cannot take the profit, that's all.
No,
there is some kind of commissions also.
You don't get money from the students.
No, we have to pay. Students have to pay.
They have to pay.
University they have to pay.
If you're going to get a loan which adds to the liability to the country, you're going to get approval. Have you got the approval?
We have not informed to get the approval.
BOI එකයි ලංකා බැංකුවයි කිසිම දැනුවත් වීමක් නැහැ. මේක ණය මුදලක් ලෙස එනවා කියන එක.
Bank of Sri Lanka අපිට ඉල්ලු වෙලාවට මම දුන්නේ.
නෑ ඔබ කිසිම වෙලාවක ලංකා බැංකුවට කියලා නැහැ ණය මුදලක් කියන එක.
අපි ලංකා බැංකුවෙන් අපිට ලිඛිතව ඉල්ලුවත් නැහැ, ලිඛිතව දුන්නෙත් නැහැ අපි.
ලංකාවේ විනිමය පාලන නීති රීති යටතේ ණය මුදලක් එන්න නම් ECBA විශේෂ account එකක් යටතේ එන්න ඕන. ඔබට ණය මුදලක් නම් නැවත මේ ණය මුදල ගෙවිය නොහැකි ඒ account එක හරහා. ඔබ ඒක දන්නවද?
මේකට අපි Bank of Sri Lanka එක තමයි කරේ. ඒ අනුව සල්ලි ආවයි. කවදාවත් අපිට ප්‍රශ්න තිබුණත් නෑ. අපිට මේ ගන්න බෑ නැත්නම් මේක වෙන මේ account එක කියලා අපිට කිව්වේ නෑ. ඒක අද තමයි
අද පැහැදිලිව.
අද මට උදේ තමයි දැනගත්තේ.
පැහැදිලිවම ඔබ කිව්ව යුතු තිබුණා මේක විදේශ ණයක් කියලා. නමුත් ඔබ කිසිම වෙලාවක ලංකා බැංකුවට ඒක සඳහන් කරේ නෑ. අද ඒකයි සාකච්ඡාවේදී දැක්කේ අපි.
නේ ලංකා බැංකුවට නිකන් කතා කරනකොට මේගොල්ලෝ අහනවා අපිට කියනවා නෑ කියලා.
මේ කත්තන්කුඩි ප්‍රදේශයේ අරාබිකරණය වුණේ ඔබතුමාගේ අනුග්‍රහය යටතේ.
අරබිසේෂන් කියලා කියන්න බෑ. ඒක ඉස්ලාමික් ජනතාව නිසා එතන ඒ සංස්කෘතිය අනුව ඒක ආකිටෙක්චරල් එක හදලා තියෙනවා.
එහෙමනම් ඔබ කිව්වා දැන් එහෙම කරුවේ එක්තරා උදයකට මේ සංචාරකයන් ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න.
අරබි භාෂාවල නම් නේම් බෝඩ් ටික තියෙන නිසා ඒක අරබිසේෂන් නෙවෙයි.
එහෙමනම් අර මේ හදලා තියෙන ඔය අධ්‍යාපන ආයතනයේ සියලු බිල්ඩින් ආදිය සියල්ලම අරාබි හැදුවේ මොකටද? ඒක ශ්‍රී ලාංකික ආයතනයක් නේ. මුළු ලංකාවේම දුප්පත් ළමයින්ට ඉගෙන ගන්න හදන ආයතනයක් නේ.
මේ මයිනස් මේක අපේ පුද්ගලික උසස් අධ්‍යාපන ආයතනය. අපි හදනකොට අපි ඕන ආකිටෙක්චර් එක තෝරගන්න පුළුවන් එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ.
A Sri Lankan intelligence official moved to say that the plans to perpetrate a spate of attacks in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday was in fact not hatched by the so-called ISIS. Addressing a media briefing yesterday, he said that the attacks were the sole work of an isolated local group. He also said that the army alone is incapable of destroying the ISIS extremist ideology, as it is a job for the entire nation. The intelligence official also touched on Sri Lanka providing information to India on suspects with possible links with the National Tawhid Jamaat terror group, while assuring that the proceedings do not hinder the country's security situation.
There's a misunderstanding whether proper ISIS launched an attack on 21st April 2019 in Sri Lanka. The answer is no. It is not the pure ISIS leadership. We have interrogated many members and we have been monitoring their activities. Once the attack was launched, nobody knew it. I'm talking about the leadership of real ISIS. Al-Baghdadi was not aware of it. And the one member from Sri Lanka, 20 years old, a self-motivated guy, he has linked with the ISIS network and he has typed something and declared. And they have said no, there's no tangible evidence to prove. Then he has said no, one video has been published from Indonesia. Then he copied and passed to Al-Baghdadi. That's how it happens. This is a local network which was not led by Al-Baghdadi.
The intelligence officer present at the media briefing also went on to explain the categories of military action launched against terrorism.
We have now launched the immediate action coupled with intermediate action. We are yet to launch the long-term plan. The long-term plan is launched to kill the ideology. It takes about 2 years effort at least. Army alone cannot launch the long-term plan. Nation should launch the long-term plan. Nation can kill the ideology, not army.
Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India, Austin Fernando, believes countering terrorism in the region is not a job to be undertaken by an individual country and requires a larger operation with multiple collaborations. Speaking to an Indian media outlet, the High Commissioner further highlighted that India's Sagar initiative, which focuses on security and growth in the region, will play a pivotal role in regional development.
India has not yet lifted the travel ban, the travel advisory. Does that bother you?
I think the travel advisory was lifted to a certain extent, but not totally. We have made our representation to the Minister of External Affairs. I think it takes time for them also to take a decision. Of course, the travel advisory from India matters to us very heavily. For the simple reason, we had 425,000 Indian tourists who were visiting Sri Lanka. This time of the year, we were expecting about 550,000 Indian tourists to go to Sri Lanka. And we are making plans for that also.
We've seen videos emerging. ISIS, the Islamic State, has claimed responsibility for the attacks. What is Sri Lanka doing to ensure that they are not creating a network there?
We have to have a larger operation to counter terrorism, for which cannot be done by individual states. It has to be done by a combination of people. A group effort has to be there.
Sri Lanka High Commissioner to India, Austin Fernando, was also questioned on the progress of talks between Sri Lanka, India and Maldives pertaining to establishing an anti-terror mechanism in the region.
No, this had been in the offing, which we have heard from media. But the fact remains that whether it is these three countries or many other countries, getting together is important.
Yeah, I mean, there are reports that maybe Seychelles will also be involved in this. So that is a work under progress.
So many countries, even people in the West who have information, because their technology is much more important, enhanced technology is available to them. So therefore, international groups and international organizations getting involved in this particular effort is most welcome.
The Sri Lankan High Commissioner was also asked his views on the Sagar initiative, which stands for security and growth for all in the region. The concept is based on the Modi government's Neighbourhood First policy, which gives priority to the Indian Ocean region.
When you take the South Asian region, we have to consider the manner in which we could look after the security of all these countries.
In fact, India is building a container terminal in the Colombo port along with Japan.
That's not for security reasons, that's for economic activity. So that is one. Then other one is growth. The growth in a country is consequence of lot of other things being put together. Sagar, whether it is considered an Indian innovation, because it was Prime Minister Narendra Singh Modi's innovation, or a regional innovation, or an individual country innovation, it is very important. So therefore, every country will have to look at Sagar concept for their own development.
Fernando further highlighted the importance of BIMSTEC for the South Asian region at a time where Indian Foreign Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar highlighted that SAARC faces certain problems, particularly surrounding connectivity and trade.
SAARC had been there for so many years and it has slowed down definitely, we see that. But Sri Lanka has not given up SAARC. And BIMSTEC has taken its position with some countries being added, for example, Thailand has been added. And if the member countries develop themselves, and if trade between them increases, if technology transfer increases, if various other economic aspects improve among themselves, that's going to be regional improvement at the end of the day. So therefore, BIMSTEC's role is important.
The Trump administration is looking to secure $30 million in foreign military financing that will build maritime and border security capacity for Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Maldives. Addressing a letter to the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee for Asia, the Pacific and Non-Proliferation, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary from the Bureau for South and Central Asian Affairs for the United States, Alice G. Wells, said that economic assistance will also be required to help insulate Sri Lanka from dependency and economic manipulation by other states.
Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary from the Bureau for South and Central Asian Affairs, Alice G. Wells, submitted a written statement to the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee for Asia, the Pacific and Non-Proliferation, who met yesterday to discuss the U.S. interest in South Asian and the financial year 2020 budget. In her statement, Wells requested the Congress to support the department's new security cooperation program in South Asia, the Bay of Bengal initiative, with $30 million in foreign military financing that will build maritime and border security capacity for Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and the Maldives. She also requested an additional $64 million for regional activities to support raising infrastructure standards, regional energy and digital connectivity, and bolstering cyber security. Wells further noted that political and economic freedom are not the only concerns for South Asia and highlighted that the US stands with Sri Lanka in investigating the Easter attacks and strengthening its counter-terrorism capabilities. She went on to say that Federal Bureau of Investigation was quickly deployed at the request of the Sri Lankan government and helped dismantle the local terrorist organizations that carried out these attacks. Wells further added that the US are assessing ways in which support can be given to the Sri Lankan government while it reorients its security apparatus towards addressing international terrorism and will continue to impress upon Sri Lanka the need to respect human rights, including for members of minority groups, refugees and asylum seekers. Similarly, as Sri Lanka heads international elections, Wells said the United States will continue to urge that Sri Lanka maintain progress on post-conflict reconciliation, justice and accountability and adhere to its international human rights obligations and commitments. She also requested to provide economic assistance to help insulate Sri Lanka from dependency and economic manipulation by other states. Her request comes at a time where the Trump administration has said that the US is ready to help India's defense needs meet with modern technologies and equipment. The US has, however, already heralded a warning, saying that India's decision to buy the long-range S-400 missile defense system from Russia will have serious implications on defense ties between India and the United States.
Former President of the Maldives and Speaker of the Maldivian Parliament, Mohamed Nasheed, identifies himself and Maldivian people as true Sinhala Muslims, saying Maldivian people were once from the same ethnic stock as the Sinhala people. Nasheed is currently in Sri Lanka along with Maldivian Vice President Faisal Naseem on a 3-day visit.
Vice President of the Maldives Faisal Naseem, Speaker and former President Mohamed Nasheed, along with a Maldivian delegation are in Sri Lanka to show solidarity with the country following the Easter Sunday attacks. The Prime Minister's office said that cabinet members of the Maldivian Democratic Party parliamentary group and members of the Governing Council of the Maldivian Democratic Party are among those who are part of the delegation. They are expected to hold discussions with the government and also meet the Maldivian community in Sri Lanka during their 3-day visit.
After the recent disturbance in Sri Lanka, recent events during the last Easter, where a number of very innocent people died and the terrorist attack that we have already condemned, we have come here to stay in solidarity with the people of Sri Lanka. The vast majority of the people of the Maldives are the same ethnic stock as the Sinhala people, and then we were later converted to Islam. So in fact, we are the Sinhala Muslims, and we want to stand with the people of Sri Lanka to say that we disapprove of what has happened, and we stand with the people of Sri Lanka in trying to see how the country can be stable and will go forward. I am very confident that the Sri Lankan security forces, the Sri Lankan government and the Sri Lankan authorities will be able to have a good grip on the situation. I don't believe that the situation here in Sri Lanka will deteriorate. I don't believe that you can equate what is happening now to what happened in 1983 and the 80s and 90s. I think this is vastly different. I think these are sporadic. These are few elements within society that has resorted to acts of terrorism. I don't believe that there is a sentiment behind the Easter attacks. And I think the people of, especially the Muslim population of Sri Lanka, is very aware of what is happening, and they will find ways of living with the majority population.
President Maithripala Sirisena held bilateral discussions with President of Tajikistan Emomali Rahmon today at the Presidential Palace in Dushnab. President Sirisena tweeted that the talks focused on security of small nations and confidence-building measures to prevent conflicts. The president is scheduled to hold meetings with several other leaders on the sidelines of the 5th Summit of Heads of State and Government on Conference of Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia. The Sri Lankan head of state is scheduled to address the summit tomorrow. Meanwhile, Singapore's Law and Order Minister K. Shanmugam has expressed the country's willingness to assist Sri Lanka in its efforts to establish peace in the Asian region. The minister made these remarks during a meeting with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was on an official visit to Singapore. During the discussion, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister had discussed on how counter-terrorism measures could be collectively implemented by both nations. Premier Wickremesinghe had also discussed matters concerning social, economic and political interests before returning to Sri Lanka today. And with that, we cross over to a short commercial break, but make sure you stay tuned for more local news on the other side. Welcome back to the news. Now, by the end of May, Sri Lankan banks have received over 1,000 applications for borrowing requests for moratoriums on outstanding loans, with the loan requests in the tourism sector alone rounding up to 62 billion rupees. According to the central bank, 26 billion rupees worth of loans out of the 62 billion rupees were being evaluated for moratorium. The moratorium period will be until 31st March 2020 for both capital and interest payments granted to the tourism sector as of 18th April 2019.
The total exposure is much higher than 62 billion, but 62 billion is the exposure in tourism. Of that, 26 billion has been considered for moratorium. No, moratorium won't aggravate the NPL situation, because once the moratorium is given, it will not be counted as NPL. So there is no negative impact on NPL. So it is in the interest of the bank itself to provide the moratorium. We had asked the central bank for a weekly report. Originally they had planned to give us a monthly report, which we said was inadequate, because we need to be on the ball and we need to find out whose applications have been rejected.
Tourism businesses are also eligible for working capital loans of 2.5 million rupees to 250 million rupees.
There are other issues that are coming up with the working capital facilities, which we had said they could obtain under the Enterprise Sri Lanka program, starting from 2.5 million rupees, if I'm not mistaken, going up to 250 million rupees of working capital that could be obtained by entities engaged in the tourism industry. As you know, there were some issues with the VAT, and that has been rectified so that.
Meanwhile, Dr. Harsha De Silva said that the government will track select tourism businesses to ensure fast recovery after the April 21st attacks.
Those people can get the benefit of the VAT refunds for inputs. We hope to have a panel, meaning you will have a sample of various different tourism related entities, and we will track them. So we will know how fast they are recovering. So that way we will be able to estimate any delays, and if so, we can make some policy changes.
One thing is certain, we will make sure that your properties are not seized, vehicles are not seized, even though the working capital has not come to hand. We will meet in about another 10 days' time and assess the progress.
The outlook for oil demand growth in 2019 has dimmed due to worsening prospects for world trade. Although stimulus packages and developing countries should boost growth going into 2020, the International Energy Agency, which coordinates the energy policies of industrial nations, revised down its 2019 demand growth estimate by 100,000 barrels to 1.2 million barrels per day, but said it would climb to 1.4 million barrels per day for 2020. The Paris-based IEA said US sanctions on Iran and Venezuela and output output cut packed by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, plus its allies fighting in Libya and attacks on tankers in the Gulf of Oman, added only limited uncertainty to supply. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan shares snapped a 5-day rally to end slightly weaker today, slipping from a near 6-week high recorded during yesterday's session. The benchmark share index ended 0.07% weaker, but rose 1.61% for the week. The bourse had plunged 11.05% so far this year. Today's stock market turnover was 1.14 billion rupees, more than twice this year's daily average of about 530.3 million rupees, while foreign investors sold a net 61.4 million rupees worth of shares, extending the foreign outflow for the past 5 days to 388.4 million rupees. The year-to-date net foreign outflow is at 5.91 billion rupees. Now we take a look at how markets performed this week with Siobhan Mendes from NDB Securities.
During the week, the ASPI gained 1.6%, mainly due to price gains in counters such as distilleries, commercial leasing and finance, and Ceylon Beverage Holdings. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 increased by 2.1%. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 423 million rupees. Power and energy sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, whilst the second highest was seen in banks, finance and insurance sector. Furthermore, foreigners closed as net sellers, where foreign sales accounted for 26% of the total weekly turnover. A net foreign outflow of nearly 388 million rupees was recorded for the week. This resulted the year-to-date net foreign outflow to increase to 5.9 billion rupees. Out of the weekly turnover, crossings accounted for nearly 54%, which was a higher proportion than last week.
Meanwhile, the rupee fell today on persistent dollar demand from importers, ending at 176 rupees and 70 to 90 cents against the US dollar. Let's take a look at today's exchange rates. Well, we are now going to cross over to commercial break with international news waiting for you on the other side. China Foreign Ministry spokesperson Geng Shuang called on the US today to give up the illusion of creating chaos in Hong Kong. It comes after US lawmakers yesterday proposed legislation that would require the United States to justify the continuation of special treatment for the territory. The bipartisan Senate legislation would require the US Secretary of State to issue an annual certification of Hong Kong's autonomy to justify special treatment under the US Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992. China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng said Hong Kong matters were an internal affair for China and nobody had a right to interfere. Hong Kong lawmakers were planning to table an extradition bill which would allow suspects to be sent to China to face trial, leading to mass protests and scuffles between police and demonstrators. The main suspect in the Christchurch attacks in March has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Brenton Tarrant is charged with the murder of 51 people, 40 counts of attempted murder and 1 terrorism charge in New Zealand's deadliest peacetime mass shooting. Appearing via video link from prison, the 28-year-old Australian sat silently as his lawyer read out his plea. The March 15 attack saw a gunman open fire at a mosque during Friday prayers. A number of survivors of the attack and relatives of the victims were in court for the hearing. The US military has released a video which they say shows Iran's Revolutionary Guard removing an unexploded mine from the side of one of the two oil tankers attacked yesterday. The US also released images of Japanese tanker apparently showing the unexploded mine before it was removed. A Norwegian tanker in the Gulf also reported being hit by 3 blasts. The US accused Iran of being behind the attacks, while Iran said it categorically rejected the allegation. The blasts came a month after 4 oil tankers were damaged in an attack off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The US blamed Iran for that attack but did not produce evidence. Iran also denied those accusations. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.